Alright, so in this video we are going to be continuing on with our PyAutoGUI investigation, and we're going to focus in this video on how to manipulate and use the mouse. So if you haven't seen the other videos in the PyAutoGUI series, I'll link to those in the description below. And with that, let's just go ahead and create a Python file which we will start writing our code in. So I'm just going to create a Python file which I'll call mouse controller.py. And I'm just going to first start off by importing the PyAutoGUI module, so PyAutoGUI. And before I even get into the mouse manipulation aspect of this, I want to mention something that I probably should have mentioned in previous tutorials on this module, and that is what to do if you have a rogue program. So essentially, if you have PyAutoGUI manipulate some stuff on your desktop, perhaps it's clicking some things, it's moving the mouse around. If you have this going on in a loop, or it's doing something where it's, essentially manipulating things that you don't want it to manipulate, you want to stop the execution of the program, which would be kind of difficult if it's manipulating the mouse and keyboard, which is what you need to stop it. So there's a failsafe option in PyAutoGUI that you can enable via a Boolean value, and if that's enabled, then basically if you just move the mouse up and to the left of the screen, then that will short circuit the program and PyAutoGUI will halt executing whatever it's executing. So I'm just going to go ahead and write in some comments and then enable this Boolean value so we have this, so we can actually see how this goes. So we'll say depending on your program, PyAutoGUI can, let's say, go rogue, and then as a failsafe, we may move the mouse to the upper left corner of the screen to halt. So to not have to halt. And basically the Boolean value that we enable is PyAutoGUI.failsafe, and we set this equal to true. So I'm not going to run this to show right now, but we will run some code using the mouse that will run in a loop, and I'll show you that if we move the mouse up and to the left of the screen with this value enabled, that will short circuit the program and halt it. Okay, so now let's get on to actually making use of the mouse. So one thing that we can do is we can ask, where is the location of the mouse cursor? So this thing I'm moving around here is the mouse cursor, and one thing we can ask is, where is this on my screen? So I'll start writing comments again to give these things context. As well, all of this code that I'm writing will be hosted on the GitHub page for my YouTube tutorials, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below as well. So I'll say that the location of the mouse cursor is provided as an XY pair. So the XY pair corresponds to where in this plane this cursor is living, and this value of X and Y is determined. It's determined by the resolution of your monitor. So by the resolution of your monitor. And you can actually, if you don't know the resolution of your monitor, you can actually extract that information using PyAutoGUI. So you can obtain the coordinates, let's say, of your computer screen like so. So basically the way you do that in PyAutoGUI is you can print PyAutoGUI.size. So if we go ahead and save that, I'm going to open up another terminal here to run it. So I'm just going to make this a bit bigger so it's easier to see. So I'm going to say Python mouse controller, that's what we called it. If I go ahead and run that, I see this pair here. So X is the 2720 and Y is the 1024. So these are the maximum X and maximum Y values for the coordinates of my screen here, given the resolution. So these will, this is the max, but these will be, the X and Y pairs for a location of this cursor will be within, will be below or equal to either of these values. So as we go on here, I'm just going to comment out some of these lines so they don't keep executing. So I'm just going to go ahead and comment that out now that we have this information. So let's say I want to move the mouse cursor to a specific location on the screen. Let's say I want to move it to the coordinate X is equal to 100 and Y is equal to 100. So maybe that's somewhere near the top left portion of the screen. So the way that I can do that in PyAutoGUI, so moving the mouse to a specific location. So we can do that by just saying PyAutoGUI.move to, and we can give it the X, Y coordinates that we want to move the cursor to. So in this case, I mentioned that we want to move it to 100, 100. And then another thing that we are going to feed to this move to function is something called duration. So duration is the number of seconds that it takes for it to perform its action. So if you don't put in a duration here, it's just going to do it as fast as possible. It's a little bit hard to verify that the mouse actually moved to the location automatically. It's just going to appear seemingly instantaneously. So if we put in this 0.25, it's going to be a little bit easier for our purposes to see this actually happening. So if I just save this here, and if I go ahead and open up the other terminal that we have and I run that, so my mouse cursor, just for reference, is right near the terminal over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and run it. And you can see it moved up to the left-hand corner of the screen. So if you didn't quite catch that, again, the mouse cursor is here. I'll run the program, and there it moves on its own up to the top left portion, the 100, 100 portion of the screen. Cool. So again, since I don't want these things to execute as we move on here, I'm going to just comment out this line. So let's see. So I'm just going to comment that out. Okay, so another thing we can do that's a little bit more elaborate than just moving it to a single location is we can store that into a loop. So we can move the mouse to a specific location, let's say in a loop. So same principle that we saw up there. The only thing that's really different is we're just moving it in a loop. So I'm just going to say for I in range 10, so some arbitrary number I'm just throwing in here. I'm just going to say PyAutoGUI.move to, let's give it 100, 100 again with duration of 0.25. I'm going to copy this line, paste it 3 more times, and then I'm just going to put in, let's say 200 here, let's say 200 there as well, and let's say 200 here. And for this one, let's say 200. So if this loop just ran one time, basically what would happen is it would move, this mouse cursor would go to 100, 100, then 200, 100, then 200, 200, and then 100, 200. So it would just do this one time. But now that we're moving in a loop, you'll see it kind of perform this pattern over and over again. So let me go ahead and run this so we can actually see. Let me make sure that I've saved it. Let me go back to our terminal over here. Let me run it. I'm going to let go of the mouse. Again, the cursor is over here. So let's see. So it doesn't know move. That's because I meant to put move to. So I'll just make sure that I have the right function name in there. Write it again. Hopefully this works. Again, the cursor is over here. So we can see it moving on the top left screen. It's kind of moving in this square shape there. So it just keeps moving, keeps moving. It's going to do that 10 times in total. So we'll just wait for it to finish. It's just going to keep going. And again, maybe this is a good point to illustrate that if we'd like to stop it, if we kind of get the, well, it's already stopped on its own, but if I run this again, let's say I run it again, and I realize that it's doing something wrong, I can move the mouse on my own all the way up to the top left part of the screen, and then you see this failsafe exception, which triggered because of this Boolean value that we have set up here. So again, if you have something that's kind of going on and that's not quite what you want, you can very easily trigger the failsafe by just quickly moving the mouse up to the left hand corner of the screen. I'm just going to clear that so that's a little bit cleaner and minimize that and move on. So I'm just going to go ahead and let's see, I'm just going to go ahead and comment this out again so it doesn't keep running. So the next thing that we might want to do is we might want to move a mouse not to a location but relative to a location. So for instance, if I'm let's say over here, I want to move the mouse relative to this location 100 units to the right. So instead of moving it to a specific location of 100, 100, maybe I'm at this location, but I want to move relative to the location that I'm at. So that is a slightly different function, but the parameters that it takes are the same. So I'm just going to say move the mouse relative to a specific location, if I can spell here. So again, same basic parameters it takes, only the function name is not move to, it's move rel. And then we're just going to give it 100, let's say 0, and then a duration of 0.25. So let's say I'm over here in this rough location over here. I run it, it's going to move me 100 units to the right. So I'm just going to go ahead and verify that, pop this open, move my mouse over here, and I'm going to run the program. And you can see that it's moved over 100 units. So if you didn't catch that, I'll go ahead and, again, my cursor's over here, I'm moving it up here, run the program, and let go of the mouse, and there it goes 100 units to the right. Okay, so that's kind of that. Just like you did for move 2, if you wanted to do a similar thing in a loop, the same principle applies. That's a little bit redundant probably for these purposes, so I'm just going to go ahead and I guess just if you wanted to, you could copy this exact code here and replace move 2 with move rel, and you'll get a similar effect, but for relative moving. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to actually print out the position of the mouse. So I mentioned this, but I didn't actually give code for giving the position of the XY pair for where the mouse is on my screen. So I just gave us the coordinates of the computer screen. So let me actually give you code that will tell you where the mouse is on your screen at any one point. So the way you can do that, I'm going to put in a comment here, getting the mouse position. Again, this is an XY pair, so it's going to be based on the resolution of your monitor. And the way you can extract that information is by saying print PyAutoGUI.position. And then if I just go ahead and open this up, run this code here, I'll see a pair like right around here is about 855, 513. I could do numbers. So like if I move it up here and run the code again, it probably will be close to 100, not quite exactly. Yeah, so if I move it maybe right a little bit more and down a little bit more, yeah, not quite there, but you know. So it's giving you the relative, the position of where the cursor is on the screen. So that's quite handy, just to know how to do that. Just going to go ahead and comment that out. Let's see, so the next thing that you might want to do in such a program that manipulates the mouse is to click. So if you want to click the mouse, so I'll say clicking the mouse. So the click function takes 2 arguments. So you can guess what those arguments are. They're the XY pair of where the mouse cursor is currently on. So that correspond, of course, to the XY positions on the screen. So if you click some area, then you can give it an XY pair and it will click on that specific location. So for instance, if I say PyAutoGUI, actually before we do that, let's actually find something that if I click on it, it will react. So this, if I click on that, that will expand this menu option here. So the first thing I guess I want to do is I want to find out where is this location on my monitor. So I'm going to actually go up a little bit, uncomment this thing, save it, and then I'm going to have my mouse here and I'll run the code. So let me do that. So I'll move my mouse up here, I'll run the code. So it looks like that location is about 167.38. Okay, so I'll use that information to click there. So I'm going to say, let's see, so I'm going to say PyAutoGUI.click, and then I'm going to give it the XY pair of where I want to click. So that was 167.38. So let's see, so if I go ahead and save it and then run this, I'm just going to let go and run it there. So there it goes, it clicked that location on its own. Again, I guess I'll just run that again. So it moves over to that location and clicks it. So clicks the menu item, that's quite nice. I'm going to comment that out because I don't want that to continue to happen every time I run this program. So let's see, another thing that you might want to do is dragging the mouse. So just like you would, so dragging the mouse is when you click on a folder and drag it to a location. That is the dragging action. That's what we want to replicate using PyAutoGUI. So I'll just say dragging the mouse. So moving the mouse while simultaneously, I think I spelled that right, hopefully, while clicking. So just like you have move to and move rel, you have analogous functions for drag. So you have drag to and drag rel, where you can probably extrapolate based on what you know about move to and move rel. Drag to and drag rel are going to be similar, only it's for clicking and dragging. So I guess let's take a look at that in action. So actually I'm going to minimize this, and what I want to do is I want to, let's say I want to click on one of these folders here and I want to drag it somewhere. Like I want to drag it to the right somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out where the location of the folder is that I want to click and drag. So I'm going to find out where this is. I'm going to tell it to drag, let's say relative to, or maybe drag to a specific location on my monitor, and then I'm just going to go ahead and run that code. So the first thing, I guess I should go back to the code here. I'm going to re-enable this code, which gives me the position of my cursor. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this, and I want to figure out where this projects folder is on my desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and run the code. Let's see, I don't think I saved that. So let me go ahead and try that again. So tell me where the folder is. It's about 103 to 11. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drag the folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say PyAutoGUI.drag to. Let's give it a location of, let's see, so this was around 103 to 11. Let's say I want to drag it to the right. So I'll increase this value by, let's say, 200 units. So instead of 103, let's say 303, and then I have a terrible memory, 211. We'll just keep the y coordinate the same. So I'm going to go ahead and I save that. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to bring this guy back up here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and run this and see what happens. So let's see. So it looks like it clicked and dragged. I think one thing that didn't work out quite well, and I think I know why, is that this duration thing wasn't set. So again, this happens almost instantaneously if you don't set a duration. So the reason you want to set a duration of 0.25 is because you actually want to give it some time to actually do the thing that you need it to do. And also, for illustrative purposes, it makes sense to set this to something that's over 0. So I'm going to go ahead and set that like I usually do to a value of 0.25. So just make sure I've saved that. Again, minimize this, go over here, and I'm going to go ahead and run it again. Oops, what happened there is I didn't move my mouse cursor over to the projects folder. So I suppose what I could do is I could either move it over there myself, which I guess is what I'm going to do for this case. If you wanted to, though, you could write code that would just move the mouse cursor over to the location. Actually, that's only one line. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm sorry to keep returning to the code. So basically what I want to do is I want to first move the mouse over to the location of the folder. Let's tie everything together here. So PyAutoGUI move to, and again, the location of the folder, just to pop this back open, was 103 and 211. So I want to move it to 103 and 211. We'll set that to a duration of 0.25. And then I want to drag where the mouse is at that point, which is hopefully in the projects folder, 300 to 303, so 200 units to the right. So I've written that, I believe, minimize this, hopefully for the last time, and then go ahead and run this code. So there we go. So basically it just went over there, clicked and dragged it, and then it also just printed out the current location of where my cursor, or where my mouse cursor was, which was over here. So just in case you didn't see that, I'll move that back where it was, roughly. Hopefully it will still work. I think it's pretty much back where it was. Run it again, and you can see it moved it over to the right. Pretty cool. So let's see. I think that's pretty much all I really wanted to cover. Maybe one other thing is scrolling. So if you have a terminal window like this, if you scroll up or scroll down, you can also automate that using PyAutoGUI as well. So the way you can do that, just very quickly, I'll just put in a comment, scrolling the mouse, and essentially the way that you can tell PyAutoGUI to do that is say PyAutoGUI.scroll, and it just takes a parameter that tells PyAutoGUI how many units to scroll. So in this case, I'm just going to say scroll 200 units. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And if I open up this terminal here, you can see that I can scroll up and down here. So if I run that, keep an eye on this scroll bar over here. So I'm going to run that, and note that it jumped all the way up to the top. So again, I move that scroll bar all the way down, and it scrolled all the way up to the top. So that's pretty much it. So that covers a lot of what you can do with the mouse. Again, this is really just kind of fundamentals. Applying it to something interesting and useful will probably be a subsequent video on my channel. So hopefully I can put together some interesting things that you can see PyAutoGUI doing something actually interesting and useful in action. I hope this video was useful to you. If you found it useful, please do let me know in the comment section. It's always very much appreciated. If you like the content, subscribe. Let me know what you'd like to see on the channel. And thanks again for watching. Have a great day.